Everyone, thanks for joining. We're going to be starting here in about a minute or so as I hear people chiming into the meeting.
And for everybody present, we're live streaming this to Facebook and recording it.
All right, looks like it's slowed down, so I'll do my typical introduction here, and then we'll get moving on to actual agenda items. Welcome everyone to the October meeting of the Washington Square West Civic Association. The big agenda item tonight is actually announcing nominations for next month's election. I'll be giving some more details on process, announcing who they are, and hopefully we'll have all of them on the meeting here to give a brief introduction to themselves. We normally wouldn't do that until the actual election meeting, but given that everything's online, I feel like it'd be nice for us to hear from them, not just at this meeting, but also at the election meeting. So we'll do that later on. And then, of course, we have some zoning agenda items tonight. First off, we usually start with the approval of the minutes. We might have some board members trickling in now, but we might have everybody on. See if we can get a good count on that. Deb, are you looking at who we have here?
I think we have, is Tammy here?
I have not seen Tammy.
So
We can
then
round
it
back to
looks,
the minutes actually, if you want to.
so it looks as though we have it at 10 here. Casey, is Casey here?
Yes.
Okay,
If we have
great.
10, that's more than enough.
Yeah.
That's fine. So if we can, I motion that we approve the minutes from the September meeting that were sent out about 3 days ago via email.
I had Heini, one comment, and thank you, Deb, for doing them. There's the part after Leanne is welcomed. It says this leaves 3 potential open board seats, and there's 5 open board seats. So if you wouldn't mind just correcting that.
Okay, in the minutes.
Yeah.
So the 3 open board seats is, we should clarify that is, those are the ones coming up for their term elections. And then we have the 2 vacancies. So we'll correct those in the minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So the only
otherwise-
thing that, so all that needs to be changed on that is that this leaves 5 potential open board seats, correct?
That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say specifically that that 3 seats are coming up for their term elections and 2 are currently vacant.
Okay, got it. And 2 vacant,
Mhm.
got it.
Oh,
Any other suggested changes?
Hello.
Hi,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, my hand is raised. I would like to request that the recording of the meeting be posted publicly accessible website, the Wash West website. Can we do that within 24 hours? Is that going to be an unreasonable request?
Bob, can you confirm that the
Excuse me, do we have a motion
meeting
on
was
the floor?
recorded?
Yeah, I think we have to finish the minutes first and then we can,
Yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll wrap that up. Thank you for the correction to the minutes. Do we have any other corrections? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and basically carry on that motion, call for the vote. All in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting?
all right.
And Deb, let us know when you want to move on to the no's and abstentions.
Okay, you can go ahead with that.
Okay, if I get any verbal no's or verbal abstentions or into the chat. Okay. Okay, so let's round back to that then. Bob, can you confirm that the meeting was recorded?
The meeting is being recorded, and Catalina and I are working on setting up a YouTube site that'll be eventually connected to the website.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it's connected now, but it will be up on, I can put them up on YouTube pretty quickly.
Now, Elizabeth, were you referring to the last meeting or this meeting?
I'm referring to all prior meetings and anything after this meeting. Yeah, it would be really more effective and more efficient rather than to be posting on Facebook, which a lot of people don't have access to. If it was available as an email blast from the Wash West Civic Association site in a manner that would be very timely and accessible.
Okay, understood. And I'll actually have to round back and check to see if you need a Facebook account to watch a video like that. And that might be the case, actually.
Well, I can put them up on YouTube. I just can't promise that they'll be within 24 hours, depending on my work schedule.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we
this
can get
is-
them up relatively quickly.
Okay.
But to Elizabeth, we have a channel now. So even if we're not able to link right away to the website, as it may take a little bit more work, we'll be able to share the channel with you so you can access those videos.
Great, that would be great. Thank you so much. Anything, publicly would be great because I know, getting information out there is probably paramount for a lot of people right now. And, it really needs to be done in a timely way, in a way that's the most accessible possible. That would be great.
I think the board is in support of posting these videos publicly, of course, because we're even recording them now. Before the pandemic, our meetings were in person and in person only. So I would say that us recording them and posting them in general is a big step forward, and we're happy to start a YouTube page, which we already have, and load them online there. So the Civic's making advances in that step, in that process. Okay, so first agenda item other than the minutes per se, we actually have Sherry Hirsch here. If she can speak up and just indicate that she's available, I'm going to announce her here or introduce her here. Hi, Sherry. So she's actually from Mural Arts Philadelphia, and she wants to present a mural to the community group for 833 Chestnut Street. And you'll know that is the large department store or former department store at between 8th and 9th on Chestnut Street, where the Disney parking lot is. So I hope you have some visuals perhaps, and if not, I can pull up something on my screen of the building.
I brought a recorded presentation. It takes about 9 minutes. Is that okay?
Let me run that by the board. What do y'all think about that?
We should see it. Let's just run through it quickly.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
I
want to
think
check with
so.
them first. I don't want to do any make any executive decisions. Yeah, so that sounds great, Sherry. We'll go ahead and check that out.
Okay, give me 1 second to click on it.
Yeah, no rush. And then Bob, if you wouldn't mind making her a co-host or allowing her to share her screen.
I think I
Screen sharing is
can.
allowed.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
and I'm gonna share sound. Okay, here we go. It's a very narrative mural, which is why 25 people worked on it. So that's why we did the recording, because it's pretty hard to just say it, me. So here you go.
This initiative presentation. This is hosted by Mural Arts Philadelphia, the largest public arts organization in the country, and is also spearheaded by the Environmental Justice Department within Mural Arts itself. This will be Philadelphia's first climate justice mural. It aims to be a call to collective action in our city, and we also hope to inspire people to take collective action for climate and environmental justice. The mural design has been approved by a wide range of organizations, including an outside review panel at Mural Arts, experts from the larger art and environmental justice world, the Philadelphia Art Commission, and most importantly, our 25 Climate Justice Initiative collaborators. Now let's take a look at the wall where hopefully our mural will be given. The proposed mural site is right downtown in Philadelphia on a major wall, west-facing facade of 833 Chestnut Street. It's overlooking a parking lot at 8th and Chestnut. The surface will be treated with 1 coat of PrepRite Pro Block primer, and the mural will be painted on polytab and later installed on a prepared wall. The mural will then fit more than 3/4 of the wall with a background of neutral warm gray agreed on with the building's owners to cover the entire pink area.
The overarching visual concept for the mural is the bottom layer is Turtle Island and all our relations. The next layer up is the land and the harms that have come over time. And the arising off of the land is interconnectedness and regrowth, forming a web of interconnection and change is happening and hopeful visions of the future. It's the same content in writing. And there's a representation of the concept and some of the strengths. And here's the mural design.
Hi, my name is Denise Bright Dove Ashton Dunkley. I'm from the Nanticoke Lenape Nation on the Lenape-Hoking, which encompasses the state that I live on, Delaware and New Jersey, parts of Pennsylvania, upwards of New York, some parts of Maryland as well. I was brought on this project to, which I'm very appreciative of, to give an Indigenous perspective on how we feel about the land and to explain what Turtle Island is to us. And Turtle Island is basically Mother Earth. I'd like to explain how Indigenous people, especially my people specifically, Lenape people, lived in a harmonious way with the earth in reciprocity. Our story begins in the top left of the corner up there with the moon. And we felt that that was a good way to reflect on a land and natural earth as it once was, and how we didn't, as Indigenous people, in living harmoniously with the earth, it wasn't through extraction, it was just a harmonious balance, and we didn't have a calendar or anything like that. So you'll see up there in that moon, that was our calendar, the different symbols that we have on the moon there. For example, January, whatever went on naturally told us what to do, and it was our guidance time-wise. So in January, you'll see the moon with the wolf howling, and that told us that when we hear the wolves howl, that is very cold. Skipping over to March, for example, you'll see a picture of a shadfish, and that would tell us that the shad are in the water. And there's just different variations of things in there that explain how we lived in this harmonious way with the guidance of Earth's natural messages. So coming down the river, you'll see some tree lines, some natural animals, some fish. It's reflective of a clean, again, pure land as it once was. And then we come down to Turtle Island. And we felt like a good representation would be to show contact. And that contact is an example of how colonization began. You'll see a dock there. There are some slave shackles leading up onto the land, because that was a way that during colonization, that's how the work all got started. And you'll see some trees, and it shows erasure, logging, and different things like that, that had a huge impact on where we're at today. You'll see the pipeline, the serpent there, that reflects our drilling and things like that. That another example of extraction from our Mother Earth. You'll see some roads being built through. Just more examples of that colonization leading into capitalism. There are some oil refineries, some redlining in there, some trash, some different dumping sites, just deep details in how we've stepped so far away from living harmoniously with the earth. And we're moving on. You'll see a skyline of Philadelphia. You'll see just things that, are putting us in a position of polluting our earth in this world that we live in. There's trash being dumped into our beautiful rivers there. There was a time where in the city of Philadelphia, there's a lot of Lenape references, like the city of Manayunk was the place where we drink. And as you can see, with different things going in the water, and that you probably can guess, is not the place where you would drink freely any longer. And our hope, as you'll see us going up into the sun, is to try to curb some of that through conversations and change. And you'll see some butterflies even going up. That's representation of our Latinx communities that have a huge presence here, and they represent no borders, and just how things, in order to have that hope and change, it has to be a community effort with lots of conversation.
canopy that's rising above the earth is green and regenerating. And it has many of the hopeful efforts of residents in Philadelphia and all of Lenapehoking. So it starts going from right to left with clean energy, solar, the green jobs, wind energy, and below that, urban farming. There is a robust urban farming and community gardening efforts in Philadelphia. And beyond that, you can see the many ways that people are making a difference around air pollution, whether it's shutting down incineration or other polluting entities. There's been a huge effort and lots of regrowth with growing plants, with planting trees and enlarging the tree canopy. There's a mutual aid. And then up top, you can see clean transportation and clean energy and new bicycle paths and people willing to bike to work. And you can also see youth coming together and building movements for a clean environment and for fighting climate change by taking action. And then as we move left, you can see the bring your own bag bill and arts, the role of arts and creative entities in getting engaged. We have Three Sisters Farm, and then saving community land and building more community land. And you can see the representation of birds and flowers and what regeneration, how it can bring life back. So we are really grateful to have all these folks who have been working so hard to change Philadelphia and make it a place that's resisting climate change and contributing to a cooler planet. The next slide is about the infographic that goes along the bottom of the mural. And there's many panels that are going across where people can learn about what a just transition is. They can learn the different efforts being made in all of Lenapehoking of people who gathered as part of our project. And through this, they can connect to our website so they can learn how they can contribute and make a difference. And that's what the project is. What we're trying to do is connect people to making a difference. And that shows you the scale, and once again calls out some of the positives that people are doing in Philadelphia. And that's the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate that. Do you want to give any comments, or you want to take questions if there are any?
Sure.
Awesome. Any comments or questions from the board and or membership? Got it. I think that's a very thought-provoking mural in that sense, and nice to see that the city is, moving forward with something it's known for, is having murals basically at every corner. So this is, quite thought-provoking in that sense. Anything else you want to add, Sherry, before,
No, we just wanted you to see it, and we're hopeful that we'll get permission to put it there. We've been waiting and waiting for the legal department. It's a huge real estate company that owns that wall. So hopefully very soon.
And that's the only permission you need is that, and then that's the green light.
Yes.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Thanks for looking at it, everyone.
If you wouldn't mind, actually, would you mind sending me a link or that Google Drive file to the email we've been chatting, and I'll send that out in our next e-post, the video, if that's something you can do.
I'll do my best.
Cool. Yeah,
we have a
website,
fine. So yeah, I'll ask the team what to send you. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, Sharon.
Ciao.
And next up, we actually have a couple comments from our preservation task force. So just to reiterate what we've talked about in past meetings is that the standing nomination for historic district in Washington Square West has kind of been sitting idle for many years. And based on recent construction and everything, our board adopted basically a task force to kind of look into those matters and make recommendations to the board for how to work on that. So Catalina is heading that up, and she wanted to talk to us today for just a couple updates.
Thank you. And just like a correction in the name, we're calling ourselves more like a working group. Just to keep the difference with other
yes
things that are happening around
task force
preservation.
gives a certain air of
yes,
a mission.
yes,
working group. That's a
yes,
good point.
working
Thank
group.
you.
So just a quick update. The working group continues to meet weekly, and we're already in conversations with the Historical Commission. We are scheduling a call to have a conversation with them in terms of what are the next steps. Will they be able to continue this initiative? How long will it take, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll keep the group informed and the association informed, but just wanted to let you know where we are at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Catalina. So now would be the, I think get some recommendations on agenda order. Bob, would you say we discuss the nominations first or jump into zoning?
I think we should go through the nominations and introduce everybody while they're still on the call in case people have to drop off.
Sounds good.
Neil?
Thank you, Bob. Yep.
Can I just ask for a few minutes also to go through the street cleanup for December 4th?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay,
so
great,
let me,
thanks.
I'll run through we'll do the nominations first and then talk about streets and then head on to zoning.
Sounds good.
I'll just give a quick overview of the process. So basically by the start of our October meeting, which was 7 p.m. tonight, nominations are due for open positions coming up at the November election. Now, again, these are board positions. So the Civic actually has 3 positions that are basically coming up to their term at the November meeting. And then we have 2 vacancies. So basically we'll be holding an election on 3 seats. And we will have the ability to fill 2 seats given a vote of the board at the November election.
Neil, you're wrong on that. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, please do.
Now, we have 5 seats coming up for election, and per the bylaws, all 5 seats are equal, and returning members have no standing over new nominees in terms of positions. They're all voted equally by the board. I mean, not by the board, they're voted equally onto the board by the membership. It's a full membership vote.
Okay,
It's
so
kind
it's
of
not
confusing. I mean, the open seats are in the same class as the 3 directors. So it's like they're all coming up for election. It's just that 2 of them are already vacant.
Got it. Okay, so it's not 3 + 2. It's just 5 flat.
It's just 5 because technically the 2 that are maybe returning directors, their term is ending. So technically, the term is over and they have to be reelected.
And that's why we have Bob and Deb, our secretary and treasurer, too. You can correct me on this. Anyway, so basically we'll have the 5 open seats at that point.
And all 5 are equal. There's no preference for anybody who's on the board now, and there's no disadvantage to anybody who's a new nominee, so to speak.
Okay. So then basically those nominations were due today at 7 p.m. and we have those and I'll be sharing those. And then hopefully we can get some quick statements from them, which we'll of course do again at the November meeting. And then at the beginning of the November meeting are due the officers, vice president, president, treasurer, and secretary indicating, their interest for those positions running. So we'll be handling that at the December meeting then. So anyway, the next election for the board positions is November meeting. And those names I have here in alphabetical order by last name are Elizabeth R. Moore, Jonathan Bro, Patrick Hu, Sukri Goswami, Katie Dillon Lowe, and Joe Papalardo. And excuse me for any mispronunciation of names. So I'll announce them, and if they're on the meeting, I would like to hear a few words from them. Elizabeth, you would be first here.
You're muted, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Bob. I just I want to say I've been living in Wash West now for 5 years. I previously had been in Society Hill at least on 2 other occasions. I participated in their board during the time it underwent historic district designation, so I have a lot of experience with that. I'm also very committed to seeing Wash West continue to be unique and diverse, particularly with the fabric of the community. I'm concerned with the historic district fabric right now. And I'm really very passionate about believing that a very strong, committed civic board can improve the quality of life for everybody. It can work with the residents, commercial people, for them to be successful. And I believe we really need to do a better job at strengthening our relationships with community organizations, other civics, and as well as the public entities. I've had a lot of experience in corporate with strategic planning. That's really my forte for so many years. I was here and also in Europe. I also formed my own consulting group, and I've been on a lot of nonprofit boards here in Philadelphia, and also president of a 321 member homeowners association. So I'm very much aware of the issues that are facing Wash West right at this point in time. So I look forward to the opportunity of serving on the board.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next up, we had Jonathan Bro here, who is a current board member with an expiring term.
Thanks, Neil. My name is Jonathan Bro. I've lived in Washington Square West since 2006 with my wife and my 12-year-old son, Avery. I've served on the board since 2009. I was a former president from, look at my notes here, from 2015 to 2016. I've chaired the zoning committee since 2013. Working on the board, working with the committees has been a great experience. And one of my strong suits, in fact, probably the reason I was elected president several years ago, was that I work pretty well with everyone. I listen to all opinions. Opinions are kind of conflicting. I work to try to find a resolution between those, and have found myself able to work with a lot of various groups and individuals within the community. Within the current activities, I'm excited about the potential for a Wash West historic district, and would like to be part of that. And also, as I've mentioned in my statement, because of the pandemic and because of Zoom meetings, there's been a renewed interest because, attending the meetings is a lot easier. And I think with that renewed interest, there's become, interest in trying to get the board back up to where it used to be several years ago. We used to have Wash West Night Out, more advocacy, much more of a presence within the community. Bringing the cleanup day is coming along. There's zoning initiatives that can come back again because we can now meet in person. And so I look forward to the possibility of rejoining the board or continuing with the board with this kind of renewed spirit of interest. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Up next, we have Patrick. If you don't mind giving a few words. Patrick may not be on the meeting. Let me run through participants here.
I know he's in Europe, Neil. I think he was going to try to make it, but I think it's 1 a.m. over there.
Okay.
Maybe he fell asleep.
Yeah, that's fine. And us giving these introductions now would be a first for the Civic, the October meeting. Just a nice way for us, because it's online, it's a little bit easier. So next up is Super Goswami. He's a board member with an expiring term.
I think he's also in India.
Yeah, I think he's in India.
Understood. So many people across the globe.
It's only a 10.5-hour difference.
Unacceptable. The next up we have Katie.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Katie. I've lived in Wash West for 10 years already. I think I hope, if I could be a board member, to represent a slightly different side of Wash West. I'm a renter. I know most people who are involved in civics are homeowners, but I think there are people like myself who are very interested in the neighborhood and have been here a long time and plan to stay. I am an organizer, a people organizer. I think I work well with people. I run crews of people at my job at work. I'm a problem solver. I like to be an advocate for everyone. You know, I want to do what's best for everybody in our neighborhood, but we all have to be aware that we share this neighborhood with the entire city. And people visit, they come and go, and they pass through. So we have to keep them in mind as well. I was involved in the Civic in the past for a short time. I've gotten more involved lately by joining up with the preservation working group. So that's been great. I'm very interested in having a historic district here in Wash West. Like, I'm a DIY person. I don't know if I said that already, but it's like, we need to get something done. Okay, let's have a car wash. Like, let's do it ourselves. Like, you know, I always feel like if we want to do it, we can. Like, there are resources everywhere. We just have to use them.
Thanks, Katie. Next up, we have Joe.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet many of you, and certainly some familiar faces. Joe Papalardo. My family, we moved to Washington Square West about 2.5 years ago, so newer here than most. Our draw to Philly, my wife, we were living in Connecticut. My wife started residency down here at HUP for neurology, and so we picked up the family and came down. We have 2 daughters, ages 4 and 1. We've like quickly fallen in love with the area. Just we looked around the city pretty extensively. That fits my wife's personality to be very thorough, and I think we spent a full day here, you know, in Philadelphia. Probably saw about 15 homes. Got home, saw on Zillow a home in Wash Square West, and we're back the next day and put in a bid and have been very happy here since then, even despite the pandemic. And very excited for the opportunity to you know, potentially become a member of the board here. You know, I think as we've you know, gotten more and more embedded in this community, I think a lot of what gets us excited is preserving many of the features of Wash Square West that got, you know, have sort of you know, led us to falling for the area and think of it as our long-term home to raise a family. You know, I think preserving the attributes that make it appealing for young families to sort of to help have their kids grow up here, and I think features of that, just the historical charm. I think historical preservation is something that you know, is important to us, a value of ours. I think and then just certain principles which seem to be already so evident here, and just the tone of the discussion. I think just transparency, you know, respect. I think as other issues come up, just having good debates on stuff. My background, I work in financial services as an investor at a private equity firm up in New York, and I've been on you know, a good number of boards for high growth, you know, software businesses. Hopefully high growth. We try to make them that way. And I think just that environment, I think there'll be parallels to just good governance and thinking about how to you know, have good debates around initiatives in our community, and those that we all are behind, helping to find ways to expedite them and you know, help push them ahead. I think I believe a great deal in just agency of a board and trying to move things forward that gain consensus. So very excited for the opportunity and look forward to meeting you, many of you, hopefully in person and certainly over Zoom in the coming weeks and months.
Thanks, Joe. That's a good look at our slate for the November election. Again, we'll be hearing from Patrick and Sucrete at the next meeting. The introductions at this meeting were more informal. So the next one we'll be having our election. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your interest in these board positions, and we'll you know, look forward to seeing you all again at the November meeting and thereafter.
Neil, if I can interrupt you.
Yep.
I want to put out a call to people to help figure out how we're going to conduct the election properly, so that everybody sees that it's fair and done right. And since it'll be the first time we've done it on Zoom, it'll be a little bit different. So I'd like to put out an email to the board and get some volunteers to make sure that we have all of everything and ready to go. That we have ways that the election will be both fair and it's always been anonymous.
Yeah, that sounds good, Bob. We definitely need to look into figuring out how to do that best for this one. Last election was a bit easier.
Robert, can you also inform the community about what the requirements are in order to vote? And also that they may need to register for the next meeting? Can you walk us through that?
So per the bylaws, you need to be a member in good standing to vote. And in the past, we've always done paper ballots that were handed out to people, and there was a checklist that people were checked off as they came to the meeting to make sure that they were members per the bylaws. Obviously, neither of those are going to happen quite the same way. So that's what I want the committee to discuss. My thought is that we would use the registration feature on Zoom, which we didn't use tonight, so that we can have a list of who's in attendance and we can confirm who's eligible to vote, and then use the polling feature. And it's going to be a little bit of the honor system, but I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so perhaps when we start the meeting, we start taking tabs on who's members and who aren't, and we're carrying on other agenda items. And then by the time we have the votes ready to go, we'll be able to determine.
Bob,
who's
if
able
you're
to,
looking
who's
for
not.
volunteers, I'd be happy to help.
No, thank you. I think that would be helpful.
Great. Debbie, do you mind speaking on the cleanup day? And then we're going to move on to zoning items.
Sure. Welcome, everybody. We are really deep into the process of planning the cleanup day, which is scheduled for December 4th from 8 a.m. Well, actually, we begin convening, the committee does, and setting up at about 8:30 a.m. And the event itself runs until about 1 p.m. with cleanup and taking down the materials by 2. So we've contacted, filed for our permit for this. I'm working closely with Michelle Saab at the department, and she's pretty involved in helping us this year as well with the parking authority as well as the streets department. So that's welcome. And of course, as the general chair, I follow up and I'm in contact with her to make sure things are moving forward. There are other tasks that were sent out to the board members. I compiled everything in a timeline. That just helps me honestly keep everything organized and make sure that the things that need to be done are done and nobody's overburdened with taking on responsibilities, and it allows things to move forward smoothly. I've touched base with everybody on that list. Neil, Rick, Bob, Secrete will be helping, Catalina, Tammy, and myself, and also several outside agencies that help. Another volunteer that Rick works with who graciously helps us with the supplies that we need to gather and have delivered to the garden. So the one thing I will say, and of course, any way anybody would like to be involved is welcome. Again, Catalina is going to be reaching out to volunteers, so she will likely be asking for some assistance there. The other thing that we need assistance with is the parking signs. So that would involve reaching out to the Philadelphia.gov, and I can work with you on this to make sure that we're working with somebody who is currently in a role that can assist in getting the parking signs supplied to up. We have to pick those up and they have to be strung. And I know this sounds really silly, but they have to be, it involves cutting twine, punching holes in the signs, all sorts of little minute tasks, which really add up in terms of time and importance. So if any of you are willing to help me with that, a board member or community member, you can reach me. I guess you could put my my email address up there, Neil, if it's not already listed somewhere. That would be great. So if any community members or board members are interested too in being more involved with not just the parking, but any of the other things that need to be done, that would be greatly appreciated. But to just kind of sum things up, we're on a roll with this, and the departments have been contacted, and I think we're moving along pretty quickly, so we should be all set to go.
Thanks, Deb. Everyone, you can reach out to Deb at secretary@washwestcivic.org. And Deb, we can chat about that if we need to.
Okay, thanks.
Deb, is
Yeah,
that
sure thing.
email working? The
No,
secretary,
it does
basically-
work.
it does work?
Yes.
Okay, good.
No, that's fine too.
Okay.
That's the easy one for sure. So again, that was secretary@washwestcivic.org. And that's on the website. If you go to the board of directors page, you'll see Deb's face there.
I don't know if I'm linked to that page. I do not see that, any of those emails.
That's what
Okay.
I thought. It wasn't working last week.
I've never
Well-
received emails through that.
Basically, under your, I'm looking at the board page right now, under Deb Sweeney, under your face, it has your email listed as secretary@washwestcivic.org. But the website's my job, so I'll test it to make sure this works.
I think, we have to go into the back end and forward that to Deb and give her access.
Okay.
Something went
Right.
wrong.
But Neil, once you click on Deb's face, it brings up her psre.com email as well.
Got it. Which
And
we
that
don't
is
want.
not
That's
correct.
the
That
old
needs-
one.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Leanne.
All right, so if everybody could email secretary@washwestcivic.org, that will get to Debbie. Okay, so next up is zoning. So Jonathan and or Bob, who is starting off? Jonathan is
I'll just
our
introduce
zoning
both.
chair.
Yep, I'll introduce both
Got it.
projects and I'll hand the project that Bob's over to him. There's two projects to vote on today. One is 250 South 11th Street, which my firm JKRP Architects I'm personally the architect for the proposed project, so I'll be recusing myself from the vote and the board discussion. And the second project is 1100 Pine Street. So I know there's a lot of people here for 250 South 11th, so let's start with that, Bob.
Okay, Rachel, are you still on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
And Elizabeth, are you speaking for the neighbors tonight?
Yes, I'm speaking for the neighbors.
Okay, so, just so everybody knows that the neighbors and the applicant have spent quite a bit of time talking in the background on this, and we've had two full presentations via Zoom at committee meetings on this project. So the purpose of it tonight is not to go over the entire project again and reintroduce it and do all the details. But my understanding of it is that the neighbors and the applicant are very close to reaching an agreement between themselves that the neighbors won't object to the project. And that'll be a private agreement with the neighbors, and the Civic has an interest in representing the rest of the community. And that would be done through something called provisos, which would become part of the zoning record. And
Excuse me 1 second. Since this is a board meeting, not everyone on the board has actually been to the zoning committee meeting. So I think it would be appropriate for a brief introduction of the project itself, just so people are aware of what it is.
Okay, we can get to that. But where I was headed on that is the provisos would become part of the official record. So they would run parallel to it. And where the committee has been headed is to support the neighbors in their goal of working with the applicant, so that optimistically the project can go forward under conditions that are acceptable to the neighbors, and the Civic ideally will support the neighbors with provisos that run parallel to their private agreement, and everybody in an ideal world will be happy. I'm not sure if we're at that point or not. The project up is 250 South 11th Street, which is in the neighborhood of Middlechild. It's what makes this a little unusual is that it's a full block project, in that it starts on 11th Street and runs through to Jessup Street, which is the only building on the block that does that. And it has some I guess I would call them somewhat obscure zoning provisions because it's on the border of two different zoning districts. So you have to meet some of the requirements of both of them, which makes it somewhat challenging for the applicant, but it also gives the neighbors some protections for what they want to do. So the applicant has asked for some variances. One variance is to have a restaurant, or in this case, a bubble tea shop on the ground floor, which is not allowed by code. It's limited to certain retail spaces. And the second variance is to put 4 apartments on the upper 2 floors, when by the zoning code, only 1 apartment is allowed in that district. So those are the 2 primary variances that are requested. I think that pretty much sums up the project. And so what I need to do is hear from the applicant and so just to make it a little farther, I had some pro forma provisos, which I've circulated to the board prior to this meeting, and we can run through them if needed. But I kind of need to know if the 2 parties are at a side in agreement. And I think my suggestion to the board would be to adopt provisos contingent on the agreement between the 2 parties that they mirror, and to give me some leeway to move ahead with that if there's changes over the next couple of days, if the parties are not in agreement tonight. Barbara and Rachel, did I sum that up in the big picture? I know you may not agree with me on all the details.
Yeah, I mean, on our end, we had a call this morning at 8:30 to go over a last round of concerns, and I do believe that they were addressed. I did see the provisos, but I wasn't sent them earlier today. I didn't see them until a few minutes before this. So I just want to make sure that the ones that we're agreeing to are actually enforceable, because, and that's doing a service to this board and to the neighbors, because I could just blanketly say, okay, and then the zoning board of adjustment won't enforce them and they won't add them. So I'd rather us add ones that are actually enforceable. And then this agreement, obviously the separate agreement, takes care of the vast majority of everything else and is a little, probably also incorporates these provisos in some way. So it'll have double coverage, but I guess on our end, yeah, we're happy to continue to work with the neighbors for the final agreement. I haven't seen the final version of anything from their attorney. He said he may get something to me today, may not. Now that it's almost 8 o'clock, I'm assuming he isn't going to. But on our end, you know, just as long as they're enforceable, and there's some stuff in what you sent me earlier today, or like before this meeting, that we just can't agree to because the city won't do it. So I just want to be clear on the things that we actually can have enforced.
And I will say that the neighbors are represented by their own attorney, who's not on the call tonight, but is advising, that's my understanding, advising the neighbors. And I have no doubt that they would rely on his advice before agreeing to anything as well. Did I say that properly, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
And he would say the same thing. He would, some of the things I would mention, he knows they're not enforceable, or that they're not enforceable by the ZBA at least. So that there's a better way to have them incorporated. And I don't know what provisos you circulated to the board, or if they're different than what was sent to me.
No, what was circulated to the board was exactly the same as
okay,
as what I sent to you is what I received late this afternoon as well.
So does it make sense to go through them, and then I can kind of share where I think some revision needs to happen or what's not enforceable as a proviso?
I'm going to throw this out to the board. Does the board want to hear this tonight, or would the board like the applicant and the neighbors to fine tune the details a little bit more and allow me to send them a summary when they're in agreement?
I would advocate for the latter.
Which is to let them work it out. And
yes, I don't think we need to be part of their negotiation.
I will say, speaking for the zoning committee, that I believe the committee felt that the 2 parties were headed in the right direction, and that if the neighbors were protected, the rest of the community would be would be equally happy with it. We all had different concerns, but the neighbors have put a lot of time into this, and so has the applicant. So I would advise the board to basically support both parties to come to an agreement, and then we can all move forward. If we can't come to an agreement, then I don't know where we stand. Then the project just goes probably without support unless the board wants to move in a different direction than the neighbors. In my personal opinion, it seems unlikely.
I think I agree. I mean, it's not really for the whole board and everybody to negotiate an agreement. On the other hand, it's been, you know, they've been working on it for a few months at least. So this is the last opportunity, correct me if I'm wrong, for the board to vote or make a recommendation. But because the ZBA hearing is on October 20th. So this is our last meeting. So we can leave this meeting and not have any action by the board. And then what happens? It just goes to, so I'm not sure we can punt one more time, as much as I hate to bog down this meeting. I think we do need to have some kind of board resolution on what the final step is going to be.
But I think you're right, Drew, and I think one option, since we have circulated them to the board, would be if the members are comfortable to say that we're in non-opposition, subject to substantially those provisos to the extent that they're legal, be adopted, and allow me to negotiate with the neighbors and finish it. It's a lot of responsibility for one person, but I don't see that we have much other way to do it in a public forum other than to, we could also get a final draft and circulate it and do an email vote if there's significant concerns about individual provisions. But the provisions are things about the roof deck, the back door, use of it, venting of the restaurant, and things along those lines. They're really issues that immediately affect the neighbors and likely don't have a substantial impact on the rest of the neighborhood, is my personal feeling.
Bob, if we're not going to go over the description of everything, I think assuming that everybody read what was sent today is not correct and appropriate. So unless we want to go through the conversation, I will say we need to find a different way of voting and making a statement.
So maybe, I mean, I think we should at least hear from Rachel what she says is unenforceable, because my impression was that the neighbors had agreed to the provisos as they were circulated today. So if Rachel's saying that's not the case or they're unenforceable, I would like to hear more about that.
Happy to. And it's not, they're not all unenforceable. There's just parts of them that are not, and again, like I didn't get a copy of this until it was shared with me right before this meeting. So had I had a copy of it, I probably could have been helpful in addressing some of it. So I'm happy to just go through it really briefly, and essentially to what Robert said, they can be, if the board feels comfortable to make it, you know, a non-opposition contingent on, you know, the enforceability of these provisos as much as they can be enforced, or whatever ones I can, or I can give you an updated version of them once I work through them with Elizabeth and her attorney and just get them to the board at a certain time. I think that's fine also. I'll just go through them. It's brief. The first one is not enforceable. The Zoning Board of Adjustment will not require anybody to enter into an agreement, a CBA, a contract, or otherwise. And any separate agreement is between separate parties. They do have requirements for that they're updating as far as regulations, but the board will not enforce a community benefits agreement, and they're not interested in hearing about it, to be quite honest. But we've already agreed that we're entering into an agreement, so I don't know why that would be, it's not an issue for us. Number two was the roof deck. We had submitted revised plans earlier today, addressing, I believe, all of the concerns that Elizabeth and the attorney had. So I would just have it be that the roof deck location is as per the agreed upon revised plans that will get submitted and stamped by the zoning board. I don't want to have any sort of unique wording about which plans, and as this board knows, we have to submit revised plans to the zoning board and they have to be stamped. So the thing that's not enforceable here in number 2 is the HVAC and mechanical equipment being attached to the agreement, because we don't have that information at this point. As everybody knows, you don't get that until you get further along with building permit. Zoning doesn't have anything to do with HVAC locations or the type of mechanicals. We did say on the call this morning to Elizabeth that we had no problem once we decide what mechanicals we're going to use and HVAC, sharing that with the neighbors to make sure that it is a considerate decibel level and things of that nature, but requiring us to attach that to an agreement, it's just premature and kind of, it was different than what we had agreed upon earlier today. And then some of the other stuff, regulating hours, that needs to be included in the agreement. Same with grilling, smoking, because the zoning board of adjustments and LNI is not going to come out and regulate that. So that should be in a separate agreement, which we would be fine with. Venting, also not a zoning issue, that is a building permit issue, and we had agreed to that. The last piece of it where it says no smoke producing cooking, the retail operation, that's a use consideration. So I'm happy to have that included as a proviso, because that is something zoning board has authority over, is the use. That should also go in the agreement as well. Tenants, the zoning board doesn't have any authority to regulate tenant or human behavior. We can talk about, obviously, that in the agreement, and same thing commenting about Airbnb. You'd need to get a visitor accommodations or a limited lodging license from the city, and which both are variances. So not even something we could do or the board could enforce, because that's not they won't put a proviso saying no this use and no that use if it wasn't originally included in the application, which it wasn't. So again, happy to have that in the agreement. Same comment with emergency doors. That's not a zoning issue. It's a building issue. And also they're not going to regulate the use of a fire or security alarm and make sure that it's wired into the building security system. The number 6 is absolutely within the purview of the zoning board. They regularly put provisos regarding trash and location of trash in a building. But I would include the provisions about where the trash should be placed also in the agreement. And then lastly, the roof deck, they're not going to enter a proviso that says it has to have the same requirements as the associated roof deck. It's going to have the same requirements that the zoning code and the building code allow. So I would want it to be relative to the revised plans that we agreed to, because again, they'll be stamped and make sure that it's in alignment with safe building and zoning practices, which is important. And then the last thing is definitely not enforceable, not in a private agreement, and definitely not in a proviso, which is any illumination of the interior space or exterior facade of the pilot house is approved by the Philadelphia Historical Commission with prior notice of such proceeding sent to the appropriate RCO for public notification, review, and comment. Philadelphia Historical Commission does not have jurisdiction over the interior of a building unless it has significant historical value, which this building is not nominated and is not on the Philadelphia Register of Historical Places. They also will not get involved in something like this, even if it was nominated. They will not get involved with interior stuff. And this, again, kind of adds to what the revised plans that we sent around. One of the reasons we provided revised plans was to show the size, location of the pilot house, but that city agency and the Historical Commission has no jurisdiction and would not get involved with something like this. So number 7, I would want to just say that the roof deck access structure has to meet the revised plans that were submitted and stamped at the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I would completely nix anything about Philadelphia Historical Commission getting involved. They won't get involved. It's just not a reality. And that wasn't something that was even brought up today in our 11 or in our 8:30 meeting. So it's a little bit of a shock to see that as well. And that
Thank you, Rachel, for running through that. I apologize to everybody who hasn't seen it. It's probably a little confusing to hear I understand to hear the response without actually reading the suggested provisos. And I know that everybody's already as I said, put a lot of time and discussion into this from the near neighbors. So actually, not a little unusual, but I'm a little bit at a loss how to move forward on the board on this and support the neighbors, which is.
So I'm at a loss too, Bob, because Rachel, you're a very well-known zoning specialist attorney, right? And so is the residence attorney. And we were presented today with what was supposed to be a near final agreement, and most of it's unenforceable, which is a point that was made like 2 or 3 meetings ago. The residents' concerns, I mean, when you're talking about, workers coming out the back door and where trash gets put, they're not zoning matters. So it seems like we've spent a lot of time and effort and we sort of have what the residents thought was an agreement that is, I'm concluding, pretty much useless.
Well, the reason that we had suggested a separate agreement was because a lot of the concerns the neighbors have are not zoning related. They're like zoning adjacent, but they're not zoning related. So they can't be included and enforceable by ZBA. But they are enforceable as a legally binding agreement.
So you're saying they can be in an agreement, they just can't be provisos to the variance request.
Yeah, exactly. So some of them that I went through that the ZBA will enforce can be incorporated as a proviso attached to the zoning permit. Everything else has to go on a CBA or a separate agreement that we've been working through, because otherwise, if you try to, for example, if we went to the board next Wednesday and they read this, you guys provided that list of provisos to the ZBA's attorney, she would go, okay, well, only 2, 3, and 6 are enforceable. And then the rest of them would get washed. So that's why I had recommended in the last meeting that we had that everything can be included in an agreement, but just the things that are enforceable by the zoning board should be included as a proviso, because then you have cover on both. Everything's in writing and everything gets incorporated. I would be disingenuous to say to you that we can agree to all this, because I know for a fact the board won't enforce half of it. That's why we did the separate agreement.
So that helps a lot. Bob, as far as I'm concerned, if the list of neighbor concerns, if the applicant and their counsel and the neighbors and their counsel agree as to which ones go in as a proviso and which one goes in the separate agreement, and the agreement gets signed prior to the ZBA hearing on the 20th, I'd be fine with giving you and the zoning authority, the zoning committee, the authority to sort of wrap things up if possible along those lines, and have the discretion to do that. And then if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. But that's, I would be okay with that.
I think Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Catalina. I just want to say I might suggest at this point that we're under the advice of counsel on everything contract agreement as well as the provisos. And if Rachel is having some issues with the provisos that have been provided for you all to take a look at, I would really suggest that she might want to put those in writing and have that circulated, and we'll try to work them out. But we certainly have done this under advice of counsel. And
I'm just confused why none of it was sent to us, because when we got off the call at 8:30 this morning, the kind of concluding note was like, all right, we'll wrap up the rest of this and I'll send it to you before this evening so that I could have a chance to go back and forth. So I'm happy to.
I think that's an issue you might want to take up with the attorney. I can't speak to that.
Yeah, no,
I don't want to have a debate here tonight on. I respect both of you, and you know, it's not our intent to have a debate and have a winner between those two thoughts. It is my understanding as well that the attorneys were going to work it out and come to the committee with a list of provisos that were acceptable to both parties. It sounds like we're not quite there. So
So how about I'll reach out to Harry tomorrow and go through this, and then I can follow up with you, Robert, and basically hopefully try to get you guys a list of enforceable provisos in addition to wrapping up the remainder of this agreement, because I feel like that's the work that has to be done, and that's not really for any of you all to take on, to be honest. So I think that's on us. I need to just get with Harry on this and work through the list that I just saw, and then wrap up the rest of that agreement. I think that's, I just have to go do that. I don't know that there's anything else that anyone here can do.
And I will say that as far as I know, the neighbors have a very competent and experienced attorney in this as well. So I don't see any reason why the two parties couldn't work it out. They should both be equally experienced in these zoning matters, from my understanding of both of their backgrounds. So I think the neighbors are in good hands with their counsel. And
may I make a suggestion?
Yes,
in the
of course.
past, when there's been a crunch on time because of the ZBA meeting and you know, the schedule of the zoning committee and the schedule of the board meetings, the board has given to the committee, what's the correct term? I'm trying to think of it. The right to vote.
Voting rights.
Yeah. So I would like to make a motion that we give to the committee that right, and that you and that the board would feel confident that you would exercise it appropriately.
I'd like to just narrow that to the committee of board members that are participating, and add Drew to that, because he's been involved even though he wasn't formally on the committee, because I think it'd be hard to get the input from the other non-board members. So that would be Drew, myself, Catalina, and Marissa would be the board members on the zoning committee. And I think between the four of us, we can, if I counted that right, we can represent the board and the neighbors.
So it's a motion on the floor if anybody wants to second it.
I'll second it. I will second it.
Thank you, Lynn.
Catalina, would you mind calling discussion and the vote for that when the time is?
So the motion, as I understand it, just to make sure, Rick, that you and I are thinking the same thing, would be that the board members on the zoning committee, Drew, myself, Catalina, and Marissa, would speak for the board and complete these negotiations with the neighbors?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody in favor? Oh,
I just
sorry.
have a question. Would that
Go ahead.
mean that any resolution that the board came out with would basically be delegated to the zoning committee? Is that right?
Yeah, that's what Rick's motion would basically do. It would give the four board members the authority to.
Well, no, it would give the zoning committee the authority, and there happens to be 4 board members on the zoning committee.
Right. Yeah, that's a better way to put it, Rick. You're exactly right.
So that's actually a pretty important distinction, though, because I would not, and I don't even care to be involved. Yes, I have a pretty good understanding of the project, but if it's delegated just to the zoning committee, then I would not be in favor of that. Because we would in effect, I mean, unless there's, dare I say, a proviso or two, because the very project that we're delegating the board's authority to is to a committee that is chaired by someone in conflict on the project. So that would be very bad governance on the part of the board to take that action, in my opinion.
I would, of course, recuse myself from all discussion and would note that this has happened, but there is precedent for this occurring in the past.
I think the bigger issue is that it's pretty hard to get the remaining committee members that are non-board members together to they haven't really been
Andrew,
part of
I would
these
just add,
negotiations.
it's a procedure that the board has done frequently in the past.
Frequently with the chairman in conflict? I
The
think
chairman
that's-
is not participating. He's recused himself.
Okay, so that could be stipulated in the delegation motion.
Certainly.
Is there is there a reason why that's a preferred outcome over kind of a full resolution vote tonight with a big caveat that says if the agreement is able to be reached, that we withdraw our vote of non-opposition?
If it helps, I apologize for interrupting. If it helps, I just been texting with Harry, and he basically said he didn't see the provisos until 5. He said, I agree, some of them are, did not say they are all enforceable. Some are and some are aspirational. We will talk tomorrow and get it squared away. Doing it via agreement is good. So we have collaboration on both ends if that helps, and we will no doubt get this squared away.
Can we do a vote online with the entire board? Is that an option?
That's definitely an option. We can circulate the provisos as provided by the applicant and approved and confirmed by, I'm sorry, the provisos provided by the neighbors and confirmed in approval by the applicant, because we want to start with the neighbors as the RCO. And I can circulate them to the board, and we can do a vote via email. And that may make everybody more comfortable.
Was the timeline for the lawyers to come to an agreement?
Well, we can't control that. That's going to be up to them. So we're at their mercy on that one.
Yeah, our goal would be, the next day or so, certainly by the end of the week, just to give everyone enough time to look through everything, because I know that a lot of this is being done, especially by the neighbors, just as, concerned and considerate neighbors who also work full time. So that would be our goal. I have no interest in dragging this on. At a minimum, I could get, a written update by the end of the week, and I've been copying their attorney on everything, so he can certainly weigh in if he disagrees with anything I'm saying.
So there is some motion on the table, but it looks like we were not super happy with that. Should we put a second motion, or do we need to vote?
Actually, we should ask Rick. We either have to vote on Rick's motion or ask him to withdraw it technically, and then we can move forward. But Rick seems to have disappeared from the screen. Rick, would you be willing to withdraw your motion, and we can enter a second motion rather than vote on yours?
Consider it withdrawn.
Thank you. Catalina, you had a second motion?
Yeah, so motion to, for the board as a whole to make a decision once we receive information from legal by the end of the week. Was that clear enough? Do I need to add more words to that?
We are punting, but in time for the zoning board meeting, essentially, right?
Well, it's on the 12th. When is the zoning?
On
They're
the
saying this
20th.
weekend. Yeah, and so we are saying this weekend by this weekend, Casey. Yeah.
Got it.
Elizabeth, does that sound workable to the neighbors?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Rachel that as far as the agreement with the neighbors, we're absolutely close on that. We've had acceptable revised plans as of late this afternoon sent to us that we can accept. And I think we're very close. Obviously, there's some disagreement about the provisos, but I think that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to work out in the next day or two. So I would certainly agree to that. we would like to work for, we want to go forward on this too. I do just want to make a note for everybody. The provisos are going to be protecting those people that are not signing the private agreement. So that would be the other people in the neighborhood and the residents that we have talked to who have chosen for whatever reason not to sign the private agreement. So our concern is that the people in the neighborhood are protected and have their interests served as far as the provisos go.
That said, I would second Catalina's motion. I feel more comfortable with the entire board weighing in on it, and I think that's in the interest of openness, and I think it's a good way to go.
Those in favor?
I guess any other comments from other board group? Was there any comments?
Oh, I support that. I would vote in favor if you're ready for a vote.
Okay, then I guess we're ready to call the vote.
Those in favor?
I guess we should ask verbally, is anybody opposed?
Yeah, and I wanted to also ask Deb to make sure that she had the count.
And one recorded
we can't hear
abstention,
you.
please.
Is there anybody opposed?
And Jonathan noted that he's abstaining from the vote as part of the.
Neil as
recusal.
well, abstain.
And Neil as well, because he works
Okay.
for JKRP.
I'll note that.
Okay.
And they'll be recused, and it'll go without saying that they'll be recused from the vote that the board does by email. I'll go on the record and say that on their behalf. But, that's goes with the recusal here without further comment.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think that concludes the 250. I apologize to people that weren't familiar with the project. And if anybody has any questions, reach out to me individually and I'll be happy to bring you up to date on the project and what's happened. There's quite a few emails on it, all the parties involved. But
It's okay, may I be excused?
I believe so. Thank you for sticking in and
Yes, thank you.
and working with us on this. We'll be in
No
touch.
worries. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob, for handling all that. Jonathan, do you want to pick up for the last matter?
Sure. So the next project we'll be discussing is 1100 Pine Street. This is located on the southwest corner of 11th and Pine across from Con Park. It's the former yoga wellness studio. The application is for the demolition of the existing building and a proposed new 45-foot tall building with 5 dwelling units and 2,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor. Excuse me. The refusal is for a maximum, is for a height limitation. They are proposing 45 feet and only 38 feet is permitted. The applicant presented to us twice. At the first meeting, the general concern with the neighbors and the board amongst those in attendance was regarding the trash. They were suggesting a trash on the south end that was accessed by 3 pairs of double doors, which we thought was both obtrusive to the street and potentially provide issues with odor and so forth. I would note personally, when I first saw the application, I was concerned about the project, but the project as presented, the committee thought was a well-designed project that met with the context of the adjacent properties and was presented by a reputable architect and developer. After our meeting, I received an email from 1102 Pine Street, who I believe is a former owner of what used to be an antique store in the property, and she was objected to the project, that she had concerned that this project would affect the neighborhood and the general appearance of the neighborhood. And then following that, we had another meeting. I suggested a different trash arrangement where everything was located in the southwest corner off a single door. The applicant presented that, modified that slightly, but didn't present it. And I thought it was, and the committee thought it was acceptable. Since then, we've also received one objection from Elizabeth Armour, who's on the call, and I will just kind of state that she had general concern about precedent of this project, that the precedent of demolishing an existing building. The building is not historic, but in general historic fabric replacing with a larger density project, given that there are a lot of vacant commercial spaces along the street. I don't know, Elizabeth, if there's any other comment you wanted to make to that, or if I generalized it for the most part.
Just to follow up with what Jonathan said, the new project will still have commercial on the ground floor and roughly about the same size that is that's going to be included going forward, and that the demolition permit isn't. While we can object to the project, we can't really object to the demolition permit. Although realistically, if they don't have it approved, I'm not sure why somebody would tear it down. But they are two separate issues, just for understanding.
And it's worth noting that what the developer, in between the time of his purchasing the property and beginning the development, there was a change in the zoning laws, where at the time of his purchase, he would have been allowed to gain the height that he wanted by putting money into the low-income housing fund. But by the time the sale went through and by the time he started development, the city had kind of removed that requirement. So he really didn't have a reasonable means of right to attain that height.
Elizabeth, do you have your hand up on this?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I just wanted to say that I wanted to insert here how I want the board to consider how really dangerous the precedents, and I want you to think of this in terms of precedent that you're setting for Pine Street. Pine Street, I don't believe has ever had a demolition, particularly in the 900 or 1000 or 1100 blocks of Pine, and it's a really a distinct corridor in the fabric of Wash West, particularly what we're trying to do with historic district designation. It speaks to a lot of the fabric and the history of the community. If you're going to allow this kind of thing happening on 1100 block of Pine, especially at the corner, which is a sensitive corner, you're going to have to expect that you're setting a precedence for other types of projects. I walked the 1000 block of Pine Street just 2 days ago. There are 6 empty commercial properties, storefronts, plus one that is for sale. It is a block that is very vulnerable right now for development. So I just really would plead with you to caution about the decision that you're making tonight. If you're going to allow 4 stories and penthouses and all that kind of thing, it's going to be very hard for the board the next time around to say no. Thank you.
So a comment on that is when the committee looked at the building, again, we thought this was a well-designed building that provided appropriate density to the neighborhood. The building is not historic, of course, but all the properties adjacent and around it are. So it's kind of curious if this one property was not specifically designated as being historic. I'd even go as far to say the 11th Street facade with the 2 single-car garages and the niche and the 2-story brick with vinyl windows are architecturally inappropriate for the neighborhood. We also like the fact that removing of those 2 parking garages added some street parking. So this is a unique thing to the neighborhood. The developer and their attorney were very amenable to all suggestions and were willing to originally even possibly enter into a community benefits agreement, but we did not feel that was necessary. And the zoning committee is recommending non-opposition to the proposed variances.
But again, as a point of order here, so John, the committee made the recommendation based on the committee vote. It doesn't need a second, but now it does open it for discussion from the board and comments. And
for those who aren't always in the meeting, the project that preceded this one is just kind of unique in the amount of discussion that happened. The typical manner is the zoning committee has a recommendation based on the committee meetings presented to the board, and then the board votes after discussion.
So at this point, it'd be appropriate for any other board members to speak up, or any other, actually, any other neighbors that have comments on the board that the board should hear before the board is required to make a vote.
So Elizabeth, you did make a statement, which I was curious about. You said that there had been no demolitions on Pine Street. My colleague.
I just want to put in there, I don't believe that there have been demolitions. I'm certainly can be corrected on that. I'm not making an adamant statement about it. I'm just concerned about the fabrics and the amount of vacancies on the 1000 block. And I'm very concerned about the precedents because it's a corner property. There are actually aspects of that property that date back to the 1850s, although they have been concealed. That the building itself is not considered historic, or it's 1880s, 1890s. But I think there are other things that the board should be considering in terms of the things that Jonathan may have talked about. I think there's other more existential things that we should be considering as a historic district moving forward. And that is, what are we saying and what are we telling people about what they can do with properties? And I think that's part of a larger discussion. It's part of having guidelines for developers who want to come into Wash West and say, here's the parameters under which you're operating, and you have to prove hardship. Number one, you have to prove hardship. And if you're not going to prove hardship, you need to come back and convince us that you need to do what you need to do. And it's just part of a larger discussion right now. I'm concerned about the corner property because I think it's going to be setting a precedence. It's just my personal opinion, but I think it's going to be setting a precedence.
The reason I spoke up about that is my colleague is her aunt and uncle owned the hotel right across the street from there, and it was pretty much taken through eminent domain. And I just looked it up, and Con Park was only built in 1983. So that is a pretty recent corner property that's had a conversion right there. So just to, I wouldn't know that if I didn't work with her. But I just wanted to say that is, in a not too distant past.
And any other comments from board members or community members? And we ask people that not to debate them, and that's not the situation here, but comments shouldn't be a debate between the neighbors. They should be addressed to Jonathan as chair or Neil as president, so that it's a back and forth, but not a debate among neighbors, because that's not very cordial.
And it is worth noting that this project was initially presented during the 250 South 11th project, where there were dozens of people in attendance. And at that time of the initial presentation, there was no negative comments other than the trash.
Rick, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I'd also like to point out that the 1100 block of Pine has 7 buildings that are 4 stories tall, which is the height of what's being proposed here. And only one of those has been built within the past 50 years. That's all.
Thank you.
I don't want to jump in on Jonathan, but any other comments from any other board members or community members?
Bob, do you want to call this out, or do you want me to take care of it?
No, I guess as president, Mike,
I have
it doesn't matter. You would do it as president, I think.
All right, understood. Catalina?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I think Elizabeth has a good point. And I think we all need to be very mindful of that. And I think this is also where we are looking at preservation and the nomination of Wash West as a historic district as an option, as an opportunity to really think about the neighborhood as a whole. And I really appreciate Elizabeth's comments. I think, you know, it's very important that we take every project and look at it with care and attention, not only because this is the property, but what it means for the neighborhood as a whole. And so Elizabeth, I appreciate your words. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen.
Barbara, did you have your hand up? You're muted, Barbara, if you were speaking.
Yeah, okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'm not as articulate as Anne, but I would concur with her and Catalina that, you know, if by passing these variances, you're basically saying that, you know, you're okay with not protecting a historic district. I know that that property is not historically designated, but that shouldn't be the reason why you pass something. I mean, that neighborhood and the character of that neighborhood will change because of this new development. And like I said, even though it's not a historic piece of property, that new building is going to really, really change the character of that area. And, you know, what your voices are saying, yeah, we're okay with it. We're okay with not protecting that piece of property because it's not designated historic. And I agree, not seeing the bigger picture of a precedent taking place, that this may be what the future holds for the neighborhood. So that's all I'd like to say. Thanks.
I was like sitting in on the community, on the committee negotiations. I think part of in the back of the mind was that a majority of the rest of the block is protected by the historic designation, so that's hopefully demolition isn't even an issue there because they wouldn't be permitted to come to us with a variance for that. That was part of it, and I suppose the other part, some committee members, probably myself included, felt that the project was actually beneficial to the neighborhood in terms of increasing the density for the apartments. Yes, we're losing a building that's there, but in my opinion, the developer tried to make one that's in character with the rest of the neighborhood and would bring some additional housing units to the neighborhood. So that's kind of some background on where the committee came up with the recommendation of non-opposition. It's not an argument with you, with Barbara or Elizabeth, just where the committee was at that time. And so I believe that's why it comes to the board for a vote, though. Both sides, you know, have been presented with the various ideas.
Thanks, Bob. So with that point, I would say the motion's on the table for the Civic to go the route of non-opposition. Bob, would it be non-opposition, correct?
Yeah, the motion from the committee is non-opposition. So a vote for the motion is basically a vote for approval of the project.
The motion on the floor is non-opposition to the variance requested for the project here. And if there aren't any more discussion points, I'm going to call out for the vote. Any more discussion points?
I do have one more discussion point on procedure, which is important to note. You know, we typically advise the client or the applicant that they do not need to be present at these meetings. And we typically don't engage in community comment on meetings, on projects where there's already been multiple committee meetings for just that reason. The committee meeting is the time for relevant comment. So if we're going to set a new standard of this, then we need to make certain that it's fair to the applicant as well.
Understood. So that's in relation to comments being had at this meeting, correct?
Correct.
Outside of the board. Okay.
Correct.
So are there any other board member comments? No. So I want to call that all in favor of non-opposition to the variances requested of this property, or voting yes for this motion. Deb, do you mind tallying those up? And I'm going to take, in a minute, I'm going to take verbal abstentions and opposition or no votes. Let me know when you're good, Deb, and I'll move on here.
Deb, you're muted.
I assume that's her asking us to move on.
Okay, I'm good.
Abstent. I'm going to call for the no votes if you'll give those verbally. And any abstentions. Okay.
And I would note that once the zoning hearing occurs, it'll be posted on the building. So to the extent that community members do wish to, voice objection to the ZBA, they will certainly have that opportunity.
All right, great, thank you. So that motion passes in that sense. And like Jonathan said, the ZBA meeting is open to attendance of community members. And that our decision here is non-binding on the variances requested for this project. Okay, that concludes the zoning portion. Is there anything else anyone would like? Yes, sorry, John.
Just so since we have a lot of people here, I'm not going to go through them. There are 4 projects next month. 1008 Addison Street, 1215 to 1217 Addison Walk, 736 Manning Street, and 518 South 7th Street. We will post, the full agenda and the variances probably toward the end of this week, but just so people are aware that those are the projects that are forthcoming.
Can you go through them again a little slower, Jonathan, so people can write them down?
Certainly. Yep. 1008 Addison Street.
Okay.
1215 to 1217 Addison Walk. 736 Manning Street. And 518 South 7th Street.
And do you know if people go to Atlas, is there any information on these prior to the hearings that's posted on there? Have they been the variance refusals?
I've received all the variances I've received all the refusals for these, Bob, and I'll post those and refusals this week, so people are aware of them.
And they're probably on Atlas that people can look up, or they will be eventually.
I will say just a quick glance, they are all kind of issues having to do with single existing properties. There's not any large developments amongst them.
Excuse me, may I make a statement? My hand's been raised and I'm not being recognized. Can I go ahead and do that, please?
Yes, sure thing.
Yeah, I do want to correct the record with what Jonathan said about committee meetings are the place where the public can comment. We know for a fact that the September 28th, the second Zoom meeting that we had on the 250 property, as well as the 1100 Pine Street, that was not advertised to the public. That was not put out in the public forum. The only people that knew about it, as far as I know, were the people that were involved in the project. So it makes it very hard to state that the public was informed about coming to meetings. And I think the board need to be much more careful about that. Thank you.
Just to correct that statement, so the zoning committee meetings do occur every month. We do list the agenda for the zoning meetings in our Facebook page and on the Civic Association page. The applicant is only required to notify the neighbors on the first meeting. There is no city requirement or government requirement for provisions for advertising the second meetings or any meetings beyond the first meeting.
That said, I think going forward, we do want to be as diligent as we can about getting the word out in the best that we can.
Certainly.
And with a full board of people, hopefully moving forward in December, we'll have more hands on deck that can do that. I think in the COVID environment, it's been a little challenging getting everybody organized and doing the things that we'd like to do. So I'm optimistic as a board member that we can improve on some of these things moving forward. Just my personal statement.
Thanks, Bob. Any other items of discussion?
New business.
Rich Sitzberg. Go ahead. I got a text. This is not telepathy.
So I just wanted to make a quick report from the from our committee. We have a major tree planting event on November 20th. We're planting 14 trees around almost all sections of Wash West. 14 trees is maybe a record for a one-day planting. So I think the committee is very excited about that. But also 14 trees is pretty labor intensive. And if there are members of the board or members of the community who want to participate with us, I would encourage you to contact me. I want to publicly thank Bob, because he's going to help me bring the trees from the Navy Yard into the gardens for overnight storage. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you doing that. And that will happen on the Thursday or Friday before November 20th. And then that morning of the 20th, we will be out in force to enhance the canopy of the trees in Wash West.
Thanks, Rick. And
Did you
16
have
is quite a bit from previous numbers.
Drew, did you have another statement?
I have not related to that. I have a new quick item when, whenever you're ready for that.
Go ahead, Drew.
So the police department in our district is looking for a community representative to join the police district advisory committee, which meets the last Wednesday of every month for 1 hour from 5 to 6 p.m. And if anyone on the board or in the community would be interested in joining the advisory committee, typically the captain attends, so it's be a great sort of direct connection for Wash West. So I was asked to pass that along, and be great if somebody knows of someone who would be interested in doing that. Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Catalina. I just want to let Drew know that I had a very long discussion with Joe this afternoon concerning some security issues and how we can move forward. And also discussion about being on, having candidates that are available to be on that advisory committee. So, perhaps we should talk about that afterwards. Thank you.
Good to hear.
Neil, we're back to you.
All right. Last call for points of discussion or comment. Thank you, everyone. As you can see, the zoning matters are quite the bulk of the meeting, which is why we leave those for the end, so everybody can stick around that is attentive to those, and we appreciate everyone's time on those and the efforts of the applicants and the attorneys and everything. So thank you all, and thanks for coming to this meeting. We'll see you at the October meeting on the second Tuesday of October. I don't have my calendar in front of me for our general election, and then 2 weeks from today will be the
November meeting.
Oh, what did I say? Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, November meeting for the general election, second Tuesday of November. And then in 2 weeks is the upcoming zoning meeting for those 4 addresses that Jonathan just listed. And that agenda will go out on the e-post with those properties and also on Facebook. So thank you all. I hope you have a good evening. I'm going to leave the office here, and we'll see you next time.